So first we have to start a new general file. Next we have to delete all the assets that come with the new default scene. So we can do that by shift right clicking and then pressing delete. Next we're going to import our Collada file. So go to File, Import, and then click Collada. And then we're going to look for our fumarate.dae file. Once we've found it, we'll click Import Collada. Great, and so now you see we have our 3D molecule from Chimera imported into Blender. The next thing we're going to have to do is delete sort of all the default assets that come with this model from Chimera. So again, shift select and then right click delete. Next we're going to have to rotate our model to align with A-Frame's coordinate system. If you recall, A-Frame has its Z-plane intersecting with the screen. So this means that we'll also have to 3D model in the Z-plane to make sure that when we upload our model, it's in the correct orientation. So in Blender, if we click on the blue icon with a Z, we can snap to the Z-plane that way. And you'll see that the model isn't in the correct orientation. So we have to adjust the object properties. We can do this by selecting on the entire model, or the node, and then clicking on this orange square here. Next, look at the rotation of the X, Y, and Z properties, and we'll change the X value to 90 degrees. Great, now the model will be facing in the correct orientation when we upload it to A-Frame. So I'm just going to go over some modeling basics. Go to File, Mesh, and then click on Cube to import a new mesh. If you go to the menu underneath Object Mode, you can select them to, for example, move across the X, Y, or the Z axis. You can also middle mouse to click to toggle, and shift middle mouse click to pan. You can also rotate the object using that icon there. Press Ctrl Z to undo various actions. And then you can also click on this icon to sort of also transform, scale, and rotate. So to make the resonance rectangles, I'm going to go to File, Mesh, and Cube. And then I'm going to adjust the Add Cube properties by changing the size to 0.2 meters. Next, I'm going to adjust the object properties by changing the scale values to 0.2, 0.2, and 0.75. And then I'm going to rotate it along the y-axis by, let's say, 90 degrees. So now I'm going to be using the Move, the Rotate, and the Transform tool to move my object across the screen to make sure it's in the correct orientation. Right now I'm moving it down in the Z-plane next to the bond between the oxygen and the carbon atom. And it's good to switch up the plane view just to make sure that it's in the correct orientation in 3D space. So for example here, I'm toggling to adjust my viewpoint, and then I'm snapping to the y-axis, and I see that it's a little high in the y-axis. So I'm going to move it down using the Move tool. Next I'm going to rotate, and I'm just sort of eyeballing it, and that looks about right. And now I'm going to duplicate the object by selecting Shift-D, and then clicking on the object, and then using the Move tool to drag my new duplication across. So that looks good in the x-axis, but is it all right in the z-plane? And no, it's a little further up. So again, I'm going to move it down using the Move tool. And it looks about right. So I'm going to do the rest of the resonance rectangles, and then I'll speed it up and I'll see you at the next step. So that's looking decent. Next we're going to 3D model in some double bonds. If you recall, fumarate here has a double bond happening between this carbon and this carbon. However, in Chimera we're not able to include the double bonds by default, so it's an adjustment we're going to have to make in Blender. We can do this by going to Add, Mesh, and then clicking on Cylinder. And if you look at the document I left for you guys, I have some reference values that you can use to double check. In this case, we're going to be using a value of 50 for the vertices, 0.05 for the radius, and a depth of 1 meter. And then the rest of this will just be mostly using the Move, the Rotate, or the Transform tool to again place those bonds, also known as the cylinders, in the correct place. Just going to speed up this video a bit. So now I'm relatively satisfied with the placement of the bonds, so I'm going to delete the original bond which I was using as a reference point by clicking on it and then hunting for the model under Scene Collection. I can also toggle the viewpoint on and off, but I have to make sure that it's deleted in the final model, just so it doesn't show up in A-frame. So that looks good, and I'll see you in the next video.